Virgil Armstrong was an intelligence officer with the CIA and worked with highly classified assignments. He retired with the rank of major.
I received documents which said that a UFO had landed in the middle of White Sands, New Mexico proving grounds, and that this object was inert, was under surveillance, and would be kept under surveillance until they could determine whether it was hostile or friendly. It later turned out that it was friendly in that the occupants were dead, and when we got aboard, there were 5 bodies. The bodies were diminutive in size, in other words, 3.5 feet. The largest one was just under 4 feet. 2 of them were obviously the commanding officers because 2 of them wore epaulets on their shoulders. Later turns out that they were all male. When we flew them back to Wright-Patterson, of course, the physical examination, and the autopsy, of course, revealed that they were indeed all male. I think what has happened over the years, the government has lied so much that they have painted themselves into a corner, and it's almost impossible for them to tell the truth today.
Well, Virgil, you're in a little different realm than most. You've been involved with military intelligence over the years. What got you first involved with the UFO phenomena?
Well, my first exposure to it was in 1948 with the second capture of a UFO in the United States at White Sands Proving Grounds, New Mexico.
And this was a capture as opposed to a crash?
Well, actually what it was a soft landing, of course, and then subsequently it was a capture. I would say it was a presentation. We had had several disastrous crashes the year before in the Roswell, New Mexico area. And they had impacted and scattered bodies and pieces of the craft all over the landscape. We did get 1 body out of that, but we didn't have much to go on. And I feel that crash or presentation, call it what you will, in White Sands, New Mexico, was to right the error that they made in the first 3 or 4 introductions. And so that craft came down silently, had 5 occupants. Later turned out they were all dead. It was a soft landing, and of course it was in the middle of the most sensitive proving grounds in the world then and probably even now. Mm-hmm. And so I think it was a way of saying to us, there was a greater intelligence watching all that we were doing, particularly in terms of our atomic and nuclear advancement and weaponry. And so that was my first introduction to it. And of course, from then on, it became a subject of interest. And but I really did nothing seriously about it. That was 48. And then I retired from the military in 1962. And some years later is when I took it up as a full-time pursuit to research it and to delve into it, and particularly from a spiritual aspect, to see what more I could find out about it.
What did you find out about it? What's the essence of what you found?
Well, the essence, after all these years of research, is that they are us and we are them. And, and there's really no great mystery. As I said the other night, it's no longer UFO, it's IFO. It's an identified flying object. There are a few unanswered questions, although we have some pretty good surmising conclusions. For instance, we know today that many of the craft are those owned by the United States or now Russia or possibly South Africa.
Now, being involved with military intelligence, why has this involvement occurred without the public's knowledge?
Well, it started out in 1948. I asked the same question. At that time, of course, it was top secret. It should have been. I had to agree with it. But I asked my commanding officer at that time...
Look what War of the Worlds did.
Yes, exactly. Well, that's exactly what he said. I said, look, why isn't this being given to the public? I think they have a right to know. Well, first of all, I was told as a military officer to mind my own business by my superior, and I was not happy about that, and he saw I wasn't. He says, maybe you deserve an explanation. He said, the reason is we don't want another Orson Welles scare, invasion from Mars, that same thing. Well, it had some validity in those days, and I accepted it with tongue-in-cheek, although I didn't agree with it, Being a military officer, though, I had to, of course, conform.
Not rock the boat.
Yeah, right. And so I didn't. But that later became a catch-22 right up to this present-day age,
You've been rocking the boat here lately.
Oh, you bet I have. Well, I started not so much now as I did, say, in 1980 on. It's like I said the other night, these people wouldn't be here today disclosing what they are now if I had not done it in 1980 and challenged the government and said, look, you characters, I said, you damn well have lied to us about all of this. There will be mass flyovers, and the government will have to say, yes, buddy, they're here. And in their defense, the government's defense, I would have to say that they're attempting to do that. First of all, they attempted to do it through the movies, Close Encounters of a Third Kind, E.T., The Day the Earth Stood Still, and all these. These are paid advertisements, so to speak, to you and I to let us know that these things do exist and they are here.
Soften the blow.
To soften the blow, exactly. And now on TV, every time you turn on the TV, you got a program on crop circles or UFOs or something like that. Major stations are now carrying it more and more every day. So I think this is also a step in the right direction. But there has to be a creditable explanation and release by the government in the very near future in order to satisfy the people's...
Clear all this mess up once and for all.
Exactly. It has to be done.
You have been with the CIA, is that right?
At one time, yeah.
Yeah, how long?
9 years.
9 years. People say once CIA, always CIA, so they believe you couldn't say what you say if you were, or you have been with the CIA. How can you say these things about what the CIA doesn't want people to know?
Well, of course, I don't tell a lot of things that I know, and I never will. You know, I still keep an oath of security up to a point. But when it came to UFOs, I said somebody has to speak out, you know, and it wasn't directed towards the CIA. It was directed towards the U.S. government and world government. Mm-hmm. And that's when I, in 1980, broke security.
You quit before that? What happened? Why did you quit, or why did you? What happened at the CIA that you said that has to go?
I had enough. I was 3 times in Vietnam, and of course I was associated also with them in Vietnam. And I just saw the futile future to the whole thing, and I said, you know, I've had enough of this. Mm-hmm. You know. I had already been in wars, beginning with the Second World War, the Korean War, Civil War in China, 3 revolutions, 3 times in Vietnam, mm-hmm. and you know, on and on and on.
Was
and
enough.
It was enough, right? And so I wanted out. And
but you didn't see UFOs in Vietnam or something, or did you?
Not in Vietnam, no. But I was in on the capture of the second UFO in the United States in 1948. The most famous capture, though, of course, was Roswell. And that was a Roswell incident. And that was in 1947, the year before I was involved. And then the second crash is what they call the White Sands, New Mexico crash. And mm-hmm. that was very highly classified and still is today.
You were involved? Like you were on the...
No, just on the White Sands one. I was in on it. But I know a lot about, of course, about the Roswell thing, what happened there and so forth.
You had files from it or something?
Yes, mm-hmm. right. And of course, I was always in intelligence and what they call G2 or CIA, or mm-hmm. because of my intelligence background, beginning with the Second World War, I was stereotyped, and so consequently, all my assignments, for the most part, had to do with intelligence,
sure.
which was my main thrust. But I didn't really get involved, deeply involved, in UFOs of a personal nature until after I retired. And it was that time I began to investigate ETs and UFOs in great depth. I had just come from the CIA, and I was assigned to the 82nd Airborne Division in Fort Bragg, North Carolina. And then I was placed on temporary duty with the intelligence of then the Army Air Corps. Mm-hmm. And which later very quickly became the Air Force as we know it today. Mm-hmm. But it was during that time that I received what we call fax today. It was a Twix. Came across my desk, and of course I was G2 Air. Now G2 Air has to do with all intelligence having to do with strange things in the air, you know.
Phenomena.
Phenomena, yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. And what happened was the commanding general sent me a Twix that he had received from 3rd Army headquarters, stating that a UFO had crashed at White Sands, New Mexico, and was presently under observation. Mm-hmm. and the observation was to determine whether they had friendly intents or they were hostile, if there was any occupants aboard, you know, and were they men and women or all male or whatever. So a lot of questions were being asked. And through a cordon of security around it, and they kept it under surveillance for a little over 24 hours. And nothing happened. And so then they began to probe the exterior of the craft, trying to find an access into it. And as luck would have it, or phenomena, or God, or the ETs, or whoever, you know, they hit a button from the outside, an emergency button. Down came a door from inside of the craft itself with steps, and of course now we had entry to the ship itself. There were 5 bodies aboard, all of them dead.
Dead bodies.
Yeah, they had asphyxiated. What had happened, ostensibly, they had blown a portal, and so they suffocated, you know, due to a lack of support system.
What did they look like?
Little guys, 3.5 feet.
Is it like the small cries people talk about?
They weren't like the Zeta reticuli grays. No, their eyes were different. The Zeta reticuli grays have almost insectoid eyes, you know. These little guys had nice eyes. They were kind eyes. The 5 occupants, one of them was just under 4 feet, and he obviously was a commander because he had epaulets on his uniform. And one of the smaller ones, the 3.5 feet, also had epaulets, so he was obviously the assistant commander. The rest of them were dressed in very tight-fitting silver uniforms. And so now, characteristically, in other words, the physiognomy, they had no hair anywhere on the body. Huge eyes, an outsized head with the body, no ears, because the ears had atrophied. The nose had atrophied. The mouth was immobile, and so it wasn't like our mobile mouth, you know.
Yeah.
So obviously they communicated with telepathy, and so the bodies were taken off of the craft, and they were flown back to Wright-Patterson for examination. And
Wright-Patterson Air Force Base.
yeah,
That's
right, in Ohio.
Ohio.
And of course, they had very great difficulty getting the uniforms off of them. They couldn't cut it. They tried scissors.
It's not
And
like
it was a material that we didn't know. Nothing like, you know, here on the globe, I should say. But they couldn't cut it with scissors, and yet it was thinner than a newspaper page.
Amazing.
And it is. So finally they had to resort to metal shears to cut it, and they finally got the uniforms off of them, and then of course they examined the bodies. They were all male. They had male organs, genitals and what have you, but again, like the ears and the nose, it had atrophied due to non-use, you know. They were no longer sexual and didn't need the ears to hear and all that, so they were different from us, but they were nice little guys, really.
Did they find out where they came from?
They did, but I never learned. It never was reported, of course, in the Twix. But I do know they were good at that time. And my personal opinion about that whole thing was in the first attempt to tell us that they were here, which was a Roswell incident, that Roswell crash was caused by radar.
Yeah.
And
Brought the ship down.
yeah, well, they
Wasn't prepared for the
wasn't
radar.
prepared for the new radar, and they couldn't read, for instance, their altimeter because they impacted with the ground and scattered over about 10 acres, you know. Out of that, of course, the Roswell incident, we got one live body. And
That was earlier than White
that was
Sands.
1947,
Yes.
right. And 1948 is the crash that I was in on.
Is the same kind of ETs like that in
Yeah,
White Sands?
they were the same, right.
So Roswell were not the Greys.
No, they were not the Greys.
So you say that were nice. You call them nice.
I call them nice, benevolent, in other words. Yeah. And
In Roswell they found one alive.
yeah.